Today on this Sunday in our church, we have a lot of things to kind of try to make sense out of and to incorporate into our life. One of them has been the passing of our Pope Francis, and how he, during this whole week, I've watched news clips and read about his life and how he was called the People's Pope and how impactful he has been. And I have to make a confession. I did not get up at 2:55 to watch the funeral. I figured I could see it later on a tape, but I did watch other things that talked about how he was a person of hope and a person that called people together, that probably drove a lot in his administration to be a little crazy because of sometimes what they believe the church is. Also today we end the octave of Easter on the second Sunday of Easter, and we also celebrate the Divine Mercy Sunday, which is a very special devotion. St. John Paul II made it popular to be on this Sunday, and it teaches and has a very special message for us. If you give me a minute, I'd like to read you just one part of the last day of the novena, which would be today, that I found very, very impactful in helping me understand what maybe compassion is and what the hope is that the Lord is asking us to have. Today, bring me to those who have become lukewarm and immerse them in the abyss of my mercy. These souls wound my heart most painfully. My soul suffered the most dreadful loathing in the Garden of Olives because of lukewarm souls. They were the reason I cried out, "Father, take this cup away from me, if it be your will." For them, the last hope of salvation is to run to my mercy. Eternal Father, turn your merciful gaze upon lukewarm souls who are nonetheless enfolded in the most compassionate heart of Jesus. Father of mercy, I beg you, by the bitter passion of your only Son and by his 3-hour agony on the cross, let them too glorify the abyss of your mercy. Amen. That impacted me because today the gospel reading is about the doubting Thomas, the one who didn't believe that all the other ones in the upper room that was locked saw Jesus. And he's kind of a hopeful sign for me, doubting Thomas. I don't know about you, but if I reflect on my life, there are times I could say, yeah, I really believe in God and it's all going to work out and it's going to be something that I'm going to maybe enjoy and stuff. And then at other times, no. There's some doubt. There may be a lukewarmness on my part because I'm realizing, or little by little, as I am more attentive in my life and how God is working and how God is calling me to do stuff, I find out it's not going to be my way, but it's going to be God's way. And if I'm going to really enter into God's way, I may have to suffer. I may have to die. I may then will rise to something new. And the interesting part of the story of the doubting Thomas for today that we have is that his compatriots, the other 11 disciples, didn't dismiss him. They didn't yell at him. They probably had a discussion. He wasn't ostracized, kicked out from the group. He was allowed back in to the group in the following week. And then the amazing part, when Jesus appeared to that group again, after saying, "Peace be with you," could you imagine Jesus in a moment of great despair in your life? You have an image of him, and the first words out of his mouth are, "Peace be with you." And then you feel that assurance that some things, or they're going to change in our lives, or in my life, that there is a hope that is sprung, that is placed into us, that is profound, that is life-giving, that is changing. And one of the things I was reflecting on is that one of the principles, as I always talked about before, and it always is something that I reflect on, is that as persons of faith, we need to have a lot of patience at times in the way our lives are going. And in a very special way, we need to be open to invitations. Let's think about that. We're open to invitations that the Lord sends us. And there are two types of invitations that we could have. One is the ones we could give to our families and friends. I don't know, and I could say this because I'm not breaking any seal of confession. I don't know how many confessions I've heard over this Lenten season and going forward on how many people come on, Father, I'm really upset. I'm sad. My kids don't want to come to Mass. I said, well, how old are they? Well, Father, they're 30, 40 years old. I said, well, ma'am, it's not your sin if they don't come to church. You can invite them. You can encourage them. Don't lose hope that just because they may not come the 51st time that you've asked, maybe the 75th time they will come and they will change their lives and go forwards. And that takes kind of a little bit at times a hard sin and a hopeful sin. And then there's that other type of invitation that maybe the disciples, the other 11, gave Thomas today when he said, I don't really believe unless I see this, this, and that. He says, well, hey, you know what? Why don't you come anyway to the upper room and let's join in prayer to see what happens. How many times maybe have we been invited by our families and friends to prayer or to have a conversation, hopefully have a conversation, or hopefully enter into a dialogue that will help us understand things maybe from a different perspective that will open our eyes and we'll see the presence of God in our midst. So today, as we trust in the eternal mercy of our God on this Divine Mercy Sunday, we are also invited to be conscious of the invitations that we have in our life. Invitations through prayer, invitations to be within our families in a moment of peace and to work with one another and to be conscious of the struggles of one another. Maybe even through those invitations to be conscious of the poor, to be able to sit and maybe read scriptures, because even though the Easter season is done and our Lenten practices are done, have we incorporated them into our life in a way that we proclaim that our merciful God rose from the dead and invites us to participate in a new life, a life that makes us whole, and a life that calls us to change.